Kent Hughes intervened in the microphone to announce the selection of Canadiens at N-1 of the NHL 2022 draft and crossed normal jokes and greetings. But just before pronouncing the name of Juraj Slafkovsky, he said something that we almost never hear in the draft. From the Slovak national team and Turku TPS, Juraj Slafkovsky, said Hughes. When the NHL teams write players, they call the club team that the player has spent most of his games with this season, whether it is an amateur or professional club. They almost never bother to mention a national team, and if they do, the national team arrives second on the list. So before even named Slafkovsky, the way Hughes presented it a lot about how Canadiens saw it. After the draft, the new co-director of Canadian amateur scouting, Nikolai Bobrov, gave a good idea of the weight that his team put on the performance of Slafkovsky in Turku last season. Even if he played around 65% of his games with TPS, the Canadiens weighed these games in very relative terms. The Liiga is a conservative league, said Bobrov that night. It is a very conservative league, a very defensive league. He learned to defend in this league. And then he showed on the world scene what he can do when he can show an offense, we will say. We haven't talked about it yet, but he may have learned what Liiga had to teach. What was much more for Canadiens, almost exclusively, in fact, is what Slafkovsky did with the national Slovak team. This meant to obtain as much information as possible from the people who led this team, people like Director General Miroslav Satan and Coach Craig Ramsey, two people with intimate knowledge of what is needed to succeed in the NHL. But there was also Otto Haskake. Haskake was the Deputy Director General of this national team, and never played or trained a single match in the NHL, but always had a unique perspective on what Slafkovsky was and what he could be. In 1990, Haskake was a member of the Czechoslovak national team, who participated in the World Championships in Bern, Switzerland. Another member of this team was Jaromir Jagr, who had been 18 years before the tournament, about a month older than Slafkovsky when he played in the Worlds this year. When Haskake for the first time has a glance at Slafkovsky, he thought he seemed familiar, but he could not put his finger there. When I looked in practice and in the locker room, her body.